I think President Putin is playing a very smart game here. He's, showing that he's reasonable, that he's willing to talk to Trump, he's willing to talk to Macron, and he's interested in peace and so forth and so on, while at the same time continuing to wage the war as vigorously as possible against Ukraine. And I think from Trump's point of view, he's basically flailing around. It's just vintage Trump. You want to remember that Trump has not solved one foreign policy problem that was on his plate when he moved into the White House. He couldn't even beat the Houthis after he promised us he was going to beat them. He wasn't able to defeat the Iranians, right? He can't shut down the war in Gaza in any meaningful way, hasn't been able to shut down the war in Ukraine. So he's talking to Putin in the hopes that maybe they can work out some sort of deal. But that's not going to happen because Trump is not willing to make the concessions that are necessary to bring this war to an end. I think it's been clearly established by people who operate with both feet planted on the ground that we did not totally obliterate Iran's nuclear capability. And Rafael Grossi, the head of the IAEA, has made it clear that it's just a matter of months before Iran is back to enriching uranium. And by the way, the Pentagon has said that it could be as soon as a year from now that they're enriching uranium again. So the idea that this whole system has been obliterated, the problem has been solved, and we can go about our business on other fronts is not a serious argument. This problem is still sitting out there.
You just heard Professor John Mearsheimer, University of Chicago political scientist and one of America's sharpest critics of liberal interventionism, offer a brutally honest assessment. Trump has not solved one foreign policy problem. And more importantly, Putin is playing a very smart game. Judge Napolitano asked what Trump and Putin discussed in their recent call. Mearsheimer didn't know the details, but he knew the pattern. Trump talks peace, but never delivers it. Putin talks diplomacy, while fighting hard on the battlefield. Let's unpack what Mearsheimer said, and why this moment reveals so much about American decline, Russian resilience, and the failure of U.S. foreign policy. Mearsheimer doesn't hold back. Trump is basically flailing around. It's vintage Trump. That's not just an insult. It's a diagnosis. Trump came into office promising to end endless wars, to bring peace to the Middle East, to make deals no one else could. But where does he stand now? Still stuck in the war in Afghanistan, even after withdrawal, the conflict with Iran, the Gaza crisis, the war in Ukraine. He promised to beat the Houthis. Didn't happen. He promised to contain Iran. Failed. He promised to shut down the war in Ukraine. Still going strong. So when he calls Putin and tries to negotiate peace, it's not surprising that nothing comes of it. Because Trump has no leverage. And worse, he has no plan. Just talk and bluster and empty promises. Then there's Putin. And Mearsheimer says something few analysts dare to say out loud. Putin is playing a very smart game. He's showing the world that Russia is willing to talk, even while continuing the war at full intensity. He meets with Trump. He sends diplomats to China. He engages with global South nations, all while keeping pressure on Ukraine and NATO. That's not weakness. That's strategic patience. Putin knows two things Trump doesn't: that diplomacy without military strength is meaningless, that the West is exhausted and divided. So while Washington debates aid packages and sanctions, Russia keeps moving slowly, deliberately, and with clear objectives. And the world watches, not as a bully, but as a rational actor in a broken system. Mearsheimer also addresses a major point: the Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Did it solve the problem? No. In fact, it may have made things worse. As Mearsheimer explains, the idea that this whole system has been obliterated is not a serious argument. And he's right. Even Rafael Grossi, head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, confirmed. It could be as soon as a year before Iran is enriching uranium again. And the Pentagon agrees. So what did Israel accomplish? Nothing strategic. They sent a message. But messages don't stop nuclear programs. Only real diplomacy or full-scale invasion can do that. And neither is happening. So all we've done? We've provoked Iran, pushed them further into the arms of Russia and China, and made the world more dangerous. Here's the real takeaway from Mearsheimer's comments. The U.S. no longer has the ability to control outcomes abroad. We think we can bomb our way to peace, assassinate our way to stability, sanction our way to compliance. But it doesn't work, and it never really did. What we're seeing now is the collapse of American credibility, not just among enemies, but among allies. Europe won't act without U.S. leadership. Ukraine is running out of money and weapons. Israel is isolated, and the U.S. president is calling foreign leaders, hoping someone will listen. But no one does, because no one believes the U.S. anymore. Mearsheimer's analysis confirms what many of the viewers already suspect. We are living in a multipolar world, not because anyone planned it, but because the U.S. failed to maintain unipolarity. Putin isn't trying to destroy the West. He's filling the vacuum the U.S. left behind. China isn't invading anyone. It's building alliances and economic partnerships. Iran isn't reckless. It's responding to constant threats. And Trump? He's just another example of how American foreign policy is reactive, inconsistent, and ineffective. There's no strategy, only slogans. And that's why the world is moving on, without us. In conclusion, John Mearsheimer gives us a rare and honest look at the state of global power. Trump is flailing. Putin is calculating. Israel struck Iran and achieved nothing. Iran is rebuilding fast, and the U.S. is watching it all unfold, unable to shape events, only react to them. That's not leadership. That's decline. Stay tuned for more analysis right here on The Informed Perspective. Until next time, stay informed and think critically. I have no idea what they talked about today. I think President Putin is playing a very smart game here. He's presenting himself as reasonable, showing that he's willing to talk to Trump, willing to talk to Macron, signaling that he's interested in peace, and so on. But at the same time, he's continuing to wage the war in Ukraine as aggressively as possible. From Trump's side, I think he's just flailing around. It's classic Trump. Let's remember, he hasn't solved a single foreign policy problem that was on his plate when he entered the White House. He couldn't even defeat the Houthis, despite promising he would. He failed to defeat the Iranians. He hasn't been able to shut down the war in Gaza in any meaningful way. And he hasn't ended the war in Ukraine either. So now he's talking to Putin, likely hoping they can strike some kind of deal. But that's not going to happen because Trump is unwilling to make the concessions necessary to actually bring the war to an end. I think it's been clearly established by people who have both feet firmly on the ground that Iran's nuclear capability has not been totally obliterated. Rafael Grossi, the head of the IAEA, has made it clear that it's just a matter of months before Iran resumes uranium enrichment. And the Pentagon has said Iran could be enriching uranium again within a year. So, the idea that the issue has been resolved, that the system has been destroyed and we can now move on to other matters, is not a serious argument. This problem is still very much with us.